I dated online. I went to a girl's house for the first meeting. I felt this was a strange request on her part. It turns out she was awaiting trial and was under house arrest for killing her husband. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. People of Reddit, what are your worst dating stories? Story 1. I once went to a first date with a chick and ended up having dinner with her mom and autistic brother after helping her mom move stuff around their house. And I was asked by her mom to spend the night, at which point I was expected to have relations with the daughter. So I met this chick online. The car was having trouble, so this particular night she was my ride. She picked me up and went to a mall. She seemed really cool, and we were hitting things off. Went to this bar at the food court and got a bit of lunch. We're sitting there eating, and all of a sudden, she says, completely out of the blue, "My ex me." I was in mid-bite, so I had the little moment where I stopped chewing for a moment, and then start chewing again really slowly because I have committed to the bite. "I'm sorry, that sucks." "Yeah, you just broke up a week ago." "God damn it. So I'm a rebound." Great. I did feel bad for her though, but then she talked about nothing but her relationship with him. I'm thinking, this is a really crappy date. She tells a story about how she told him she was going on a date with me, and he grabbed her arm and yelled at her. I'm already thinking, what the hell have I gotten myself into? So I'm already kind of wanting out, but she was my ride. So we see this movie, and then she wants to walk around the mall. "Hey, let's go into Hot Topic. I love this store." While we were in there, she just lunges at me and kisses me. Okay, getting really weird now. After the mall, I'm like, okay, well, I had a really good time. "Me too. You're so great. I can't wait for my family to meet you." I'm thinking, okay, I can get into why that's not going to happen a bit later, once I'm safe and away from the crazy woman, but for now, I'll smile and nod. Then she gets on a highway I never got on. "Where are we going?" "To my house, duh." Apparently she meant, "Can't wait until you meet my family right now." At this point, I almost want to call a friend for a ride, but my friends would just love the fact that I'm in this situation and let me rot away. So I stick it out. I figure, okay, a couple of hours and she'll take me home. Nope. We get to her house and immediately, her mom asks me to help move a pile of 6 or 7 heavy boxes out to the shed in the backyard. I'm too polite to say no, though I wish I wasn't in this situation. So I do it and come back in, covered in sweat. It was August, muscles aching, and she says, "Thanks, sweetheart." The girl's brother walks into the room and she introduces me. "Hey, this is my brother, Terrence. He's really autistic, so don't pay any attention to him." "What do you mean, don't pay any attention to him?" "Well, everything he says is weird, so you just take it with a grain of salt." I really felt bad for the kid. He was interesting. Showed me his pet lizard and pet tarantula. I hate spiders, but I figured I would humor him because if his sister is always like that, it would help to act interested. He changed subjects all over the place and was really hard for me to follow, but he eventually left to go do something else. So about an hour passes of me watching TV with a girl, and then she says, "So, are you ready to go eat?" Damn it, I want to go home. But going out one more time will put us in a vehicle, so I'll get home. We get ready to leave for Chili's, and her mom walks into the living room with her purse. "So, where are we going?" I laughed. Seriously, I thought she was joking. Because what mom would just invite herself to dinner on her 23-year-old daughter's first date with a guy? She looked at me weirdly, then back to her daughter. "Chili's. Is Terrence ready?" "What? So you knew?" I'm smiling, but in my head I'm thinking, why the is this normal to all of you? So we go to Chili's and I feel like I'm the big brother in the family. The constant bickering between the brother and sister, her egging him on, making fun of him for being autistic, and the mom only jumping in when they started kicking each other under the table. After about an hour, we left. Get back to their house and it's about 10 p.m. I figured we were dropping off the mom and brother so she could take me home. "So, are you about to take me home?" The mom jumps in. "No, she's not allowed to drive after dark. You'll have to spend the night. It's okay though. Her bed's a queen, and I don't care what you guys do in there. I'm not the smothering type." Lying witch, you have been part of half of this date. That's what I was thinking. I was ready to call a friend because I was seriously about to panic. Not that I feared for my safety, but I was just a 12 on a scale of 1 to 10 in comfortability. I pull out my phone. It's dead. Holy my phone is dead. Why is it dead? Oh yeah, I've been on a 10-hour date. So I have to just deal with this. We go back into her room and watch TV. She keeps putting moves on me, moves that were honestly incredibly hard to resist. I end up pretending to fall asleep, and she falls asleep. I turn the TV on and watch Comedy Central until the infomercials start. Then I get up. It's way too uncomfortable for me to sleep in this situation. So I go into the living room, and no one's there. We start digging through their drawers looking for a charger that fits. There's only a USB one, so I had to turn on their computer to charge my phone. Called a friend. It's about 3 a.m. at this point. So no one's going to pick me up, but I just needed to rant and talk to her for a couple of hours about my night. At about 5 a.m., the girl comes out of her room and is like, "Baby, is everything okay?" "Yep. You coming to bed?" "Not for a while, thank you though." Eventually fell asleep on the couch a bit later. The next morning, she wants to watch like 3 hours of the Disney Channel and is finally willing to take me home at 1 p.m. I say no words the entire way home. I wanted to just go off on her, but I sensed a lot of crazy in that family, so this was one of those situations where I found it okay to just never answer the phone calls or texts again. She ends up convincing a friend to contact me on the dating site, but not to tell me she knew her. After we finally swapped numbers, she called me and I heard the chick in the background. "Now ask him why he won't talk to me." I hung up, deleted my profile on that site, and took a long bath. Never again. Story 2. Went to a restaurant with a guy I met online. He seemed like a really good guy. We actually hit it off really well. We were sharing a dessert and having a nice time until his fiancée came over and dumped a drink all over him. She started screaming about how she loved him and how she couldn't believe he'd gone behind her back. She was out to dinner with her mother at the same restaurant, apparently. Their plans had changed and he had no clue she would even be in town. He left me at the table, running out after her and her mother, who was screaming profanities at me from across the restaurant. I was nearly in tears trying to explain to the waiter, and really anyone who would listen, that he had made quite a scene, that I had no idea he was engaged. And then, because he had left, I got stuck with a bill. Twist. After the whole incident, he tried to go out with me again. He claimed they had broken up, managed to find him on Facebook and learned that they were still together. So I sent her a message with a screenshot of the text where he had asked me out again. I told her I was really sorry that she was dating such a scumbag, that she could do better. So she and I ended up talking. Now we've actually become casual friends and go out to lunch on occasion. And he's still a scumbag with an active OkCupid. Story 3. Second date. Met her at a restaurant and didn't realize I'd left my wallet at home. She says the only reason she agreed to a third date was that I made multiple offers to drive home, about a 30-minute round trip to get it. I invited her out to lunch, no expectation of her paying. We were married in October of the next year, and we'll be celebrating our 11th anniversary this year. Story 4. Met a guy online, a little older than I would have liked, but I didn't think anything of it. I figured, hey, it's just coffee. If anything goes badly, I always have a bail. I get there and the dude has a fake tan that makes him look like a leather-wrapped mummy, balding, bling shirt open to show off chest hair. The works. Alright, I think it would be rude to stand him up. It's just coffee, and then I can bail. Guy has a child he's never mentioned, keeps insisting on buying me more coffee drinks. Watch those like a hawk, but he never slipped anything into them. Goes on about how he's retired. He said he was employed full-time. Now he wants 10 more children. What the f***? Claiming I need to go meet a friend somewhere to help them with something. At this point, I was about to claim my cat was on fire to escape when he grabs my arm and tries to convince me to go home with him. I dropped his arm on the table fairly hard, apologized when he let go in pain, and then dashed. That was the creepiest guy I ever met. Thankfully, I gave him a Google number, not my real number, so I just disabled that number and never heard from him again. Story 5. So I met this guy at a party for a friend of a friend. I'm pretty shy, so I ended up kind of hanging out in a corner by myself and met a guy who was also a friend of the host. It was pretty cute and funny, so we spent most of the night talking and the subsequent few days texting and calling each other on and off. Finally, he invited me out on a date to go horseback riding. Cool. I love horses. I'm down. We live in a bigger city, so we have to drive for about an hour and a half to get to the place where he boards his horses. On the way there, we chat and generally talk until we're about 15 minutes away. And he gets really quiet. I take this as him getting tired of driving and just enjoying the music and scenery. We get to the place and he literally hops out of the truck before he even puts it in park and runs toward the stable calling his horse's name. I put the car in park thinking that it's been forever since he's seen her and he really loves his horse. I follow him to where he goes and he's in the stable feeding her carrots and lovingly stroking her nose. He gives me a carrot and shows me how to hold my hand to feed her and instructs me to give her a carrot. The horse eyeballs me, turns her head and walks away. Whatever, horse. He loans me a horse to ride and we go on a mini ride and picnic. Anytime he got close enough to touch me or hold my hand, his horse would mysteriously veer away from me. After we're done, we pile into the truck and make the drive home. About a mile and a half from my exit, he asked me what I thought of his horse. I said she was cool, and I thought she was beautiful. Then he dropped a bomb on me. He said he was in a relationship with his horse, that they were in love. The only reason he was dating was that he knew he was going to die before her. He told me that if we were to date, that I was not to make him choose because he would always choose her first, and that she was his priority. In other words, I would be the second fiddle to a horse. But if I ever top that one, I'm joining a convent. Story 6. I have a date who brings her high priestess vampire friend to convert me and join her coven. A year after the loss of my last significant other, hit by a drunk driver, I decided it was time for me to start dating again. I met a girl on OkCupid, and from our long conversations over instant messenger, I felt that we had clicked well enough to meet in person. Like many others here that have done online dating, my partner only had a couple of images on her profile that were angled, so you couldn't really figure out her body type. Since I was a broke college student, we were just going to go window shopping at the mall. I'm sitting outside Hot Topic, and these two very large women approach me. The larger of the two kind of looks like the girl I was supposed to be on a date with. It turns out the pics online were from 2 years ago, and she became much bigger than imagined. She had brought her friend along as backup. I figured her friend would go do other things while we hung around. Nope, she would follow us all evening, staying within a 10-foot radius. Now this friend would not shut up about how much she loved Twilight. Now she was on team something or other. I don't give a crap, and I just wanted to talk with this girl I thought I'd hit it off with. Eventually we were outside and they were smoking. I have weak lungs and I told her this before we met in person, so I was making sure the wind was blowing away from me. Her friend says that because I don't smoke, I wasn't cool, and that the girl should just cut her losses. As we were going back inside, I pulled the girl to the side and asked her why her friend came along. Her response was, "Oh, she's the high priestess of my vampire coven, and she wanted to see if you would make a good recruit." I turned and walked away. Story 7. Yeah, we went out to a nice restaurant that she liked. Second date, we had a nice dinner and everything was good. The check came, and I paid with my debit card. It was declined. Apparently there was an issue with my direct deposit, and a fair amount of money didn't get into my bank, which had no notice. Okay, here's my credit card that I carry just in case. Where is my credit card? I'd just gone on a trip and cleaned out my wallet. Credit card sitting on my desk at home. Checkbook? That's at home too. Cash? Who the hell carries cash? After sheepishly explaining the situation and promising to pay her back ASAP, she paid, walked out to the car and found no car. After calling around, I discovered the car was towed. Towing company was overly aggressive and towed my car when they shouldn't have. Took a cab to the towing yard. No money, she had to pay for the cab. Got into an argument with ignorant tow truck guys who refused to release my car even though it was parked properly, and we had restaurant receipts to prove it, etc. $125 she had to pay. Worst date ever for me. Interesting post-date tidbits. She was a trooper, and we're married now. Lol. I always now carry 3 ways to pay. That just isn't happening again. We ended up buying a house in the town where the tow truck company is. The tow truck company mysteriously burned down one night. I had nothing to do with that, but I could definitely see someone torching the place, though my theory is they burned it down for insurance money. Cab drove us right by the house we ended up buying when we moved into that town, though we didn't know it at the time. A couple of weeks after my car got towed, the mall and building got rid of towing company and opened the whole thing up due to all of the false towings happening. Story 8. My friend set me up on a blind date with this woman. She ended up being cute and fun. We were having a blast. 2 bars, a few pictures, and a bunch of shots later, she told me she loved me. It should have been a warning sign, but we started hooking up and I let it go. We got into her truck and she asked me where we were going. I suggested her place since I live at home with my parents at the time. She went ballistic. She said her stepbrother was looking for us and was going to kill us. She slams the truck into reverse and then starts speeding around town. She stops the truck and says she's sorry and we start hooking up again. Then she goes crazy and slams on the gas and starts to scream. "Whip it out! Show me what you got!" While punching the dash. This goes on for about 20 minutes until she stops again and starts begging for forgiveness. I took the chance to jump out of the truck and run away. I called my friend who set us up and made him pick me up at 3 a.m. Story 9. One time I met a girl online, and for our first date we went bowling after a cheap dinner. Well, as we were bowling, my dinner began to not sit well with me, and I had to run to the bathroom. Before I can get my sexy first date jeans off, I proceeded to poop a little bit. I was able to make a save for most of it, but I certainly pooped in my pants and leg. I was able to make a hasty cleanup operation in that bowling alley bathroom, enough so that I could proceed with the date without too much suspicion. I didn't tell her this until more than a year after this date. 3 months ago, we got married. I wish I could say this was the only time that I've pooped myself in her presence throughout our courtship. Story 10. My best 3 from dating online. Messaged a girl online. She seemed a bit odd, but I thought I'd see where it went. I go to pick her up to go to a movie or something. We hadn't organized what we were going to do, and she's with her mother at the door waiting. Her mother is bouncing up and down with excitement. It was obvious that she'd photoshopped her pictures. She had a massive gap between her teeth that wasn't there in the photos, and she was probably twice the advertised weight. Neither of those things is necessarily a deal breaker, but the dishonesty was greatly concerning. She gets in my car. At the time, it was a banged-up 5-year-old Mitsubishi Lancer, hardly a Ferrari, and says it's the nicest car she'd ever been in. Okay. Again, not a deal breaker, but a bit odd. So we start to drive to the city to grab a bite to eat, and she starts talking about Charmed, the TV show. I'd never seen it, and after 40 minutes of her talking about it, never planned to. This is all she talked about. I ended up bailing on the bite to eat and just walking around the city with her for 20 minutes before driving her home. It was completely and horribly awkward. There was absolutely no chemistry. She had a questionable body odor and unfortunately was not that bright. I dropped her at her house, assuming she thought it went badly as I did, and thought nothing more of it. The next day, she calls while I'm working. My phone was in my locker, 6 times. I realized she was crazy, and after a couple of days of this, I messaged her to say that I didn't think we'd really clicked, that I didn't think that it would work for the two of us. She messaged back and said it was the best date she'd ever been on and that she couldn't believe it didn't feel the same. I messaged back and apologized, and said I just didn't feel it. I foolishly thought that would be the end of it. No. Over the next couple of months, she called or messaged almost every day. I changed her name on my phone to Crazy, girl's name. Fortunately, it eventually stopped. We didn't go on a second date. On the first date with another girl, we went to a nice restaurant attached to a pub. It's going okay. Obvious vibe that neither of us is really that interested in dating, but she was nice enough so it wasn't horrible. Then she finishes her beer and the glass goes into her very large handbag. Right. And after the meal, the cutlery follows, as does a second beer glass. She then asks me if that was okay. I was so stunned I just kind of said, huh? We didn't go on a second date. The third one. I met a woman online who asked me to come to her house. She was cute and didn't scream, so I went out with her. I get there and it's clear she wants to have sex, which as a 20-year-old male I would have been fine about, except there are pictures of her husband everywhere. She was a touch older, about 25. I tried. I really did. But it weirded the hell out of me, and I felt horrible about the poor guy. Assuming he didn't know about it, she had advertised herself as single. So after a brief period of making out, I got the hell out before he came home and battered me to a pulp. We didn't really even go on a first date. The best bit about these three, they all happened within a week of each other. Internet dating. It's a fun world.
What was your worst dating app surprise? I was living in KY and got a message one night from a lady in Texas. She said she was from the town I was living in, not my hometown, and wanted to know if we knew each other since we were the same age. Said she wanted to come back home for a visit but had burned some bridges when she was younger and didn't feel welcome. I told her if she wanted to come, I would pick her up at the airport and she could stay in my extra bedroom. No expectations whatsoever. She came, spent the night. She's not someone I would even be interested in. I was only being a friend. The next night I went to work. Came home and she was in the extra room with the door closed. I went to bed. Waking up Saturday morning, she had the door slightly open but appeared to still be in bed. Decided I would wait until she said something or came out. She finally called my name when I passed by and asked me if I would open the door so she could talk to me. I did. She said she wasn't feeling good. Told me she was having an emergency and was apologizing for leaving a mess all over the bed and floor all the way to the bathroom. I told her that she needed an ambulance. Was she okay if I called one? And asked her if she was going to go with them if I did. She said she would, so I called 911. The ambulance came and took her to the hospital. I cleaned up a mess most of the day until it was time to go to work again on Friday night. Came home after work. Heard nothing from her and her stuff was still in my house. Saturday morning I get a call. The guy says he's her brother. He said, "I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but X passed away in the hospital last night. Her sister called me the next day and we arranged for me to get her stuff to her." Another sister emailed me about a month later and said she'd been a terrible drinker for most of her adult life, and it had destroyed her digestive system. Gave up dating apps after that. Met the wife shortly afterwards. I guess you could say she left quite an impression. Story 2. Long time ago on OkCupid. Come across some cute goth girl. Seemed like we had a lot in common. Hit it off real quick. Found out she lived in the same apartment community as me. Decided to meet at her place after talking for maybe 2 hours. She was easily 150 pounds heavier than her pictures. Should have noped out of there immediately, but I didn't want to be rude and she was like a few buildings down from me. I went up to her apartment and it smelled. The only furniture in the living room were 2 full-sized mattresses plopped on the floor in different spots. Stains and cigarette burns all over the carpet. Empty bottles and several plates of half-eaten food strewn about the floor. There was another larger girl laying on one of the mattresses with a half-dude that looked like he was stripping, giving her a back massage. There were 3 other guys in the living room playing New Vegas in a box TV that was on the floor. There were maybe 5 or 6 cats roaming around. She sat down with me on the other mattress and almost immediately jumped into talking about intimacy. Was heavily implying that she wanted to fool around with me in this stained and bare mattress in front of all these people that looked like they'd been up for days. Told me her roommate was messing around with some guy she just met in the bedroom, but we could go in there when they were done if I was too shy. While we were waiting, she told me that they throw these extravagant parties every week and they love to recruit strangers for them. Wanted me to come by for their next party. Got serious serial horror movie vibes from the whole thing. Texted a friend to call me with some sort of emergency to give me an excuse to get out of there ASAP. It worked, and I went out of my way to avoid that section of the apartment complex ever since. Story 3. I invited a guy over for Netflix and chill for the second date. The first one was super successful, so I don't mind letting him over. I welcomed him to pick the show, and he picked Big Mouth. Really not my thing, but okay, let's try. 5 minutes in, and there's a brief moment on screen, and I'm like, yeah, no, I don't like this. Let's watch something else. He said okay, and we watched Cells at Work for a bit, but ended up turning off the TV to chat more. He tells me he's a f***y several times, and I'm open-minded. I'm not a f***, but I date nerds. It's par for the course. After he tells me probably the third time he's a f***y, I realize he wants more than okay cool. So I say I'm not a f***y, but I've looked into it and watched a YouTube video on it. The video cited as CP for the f***y community with loopholes of you don't know their age. It said the majority of the f***y community also disowns it. I tell him as long as you're not into cub, I could care less. He says, well, I actually am. And I'm like, whoa, I must be misunderstanding some factor here. You wouldn't just admit it to your second date. So I asked him, what do you mean by cub? He pulls a picture of a very accurate, obviously drawn with cat ears and no hair. I'm just shocked, like going insane. What's the guts to do that in a second date? I send him home because it's getting late and ask my friends, could I possibly be missing something, or did a second date just admit that to my face? They're all like, yeah, that's just that. Cool. I don't mess with that, obviously. I texted him not to contact me again, and he comes to my house again. I tell my roommate the situation, and he guards the door with a bat. He's knocking and yelling and wants to talk, then collapses on my porch. He has a sleep disorder, and it's like 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Fahrenheit is freezing, without a coat. I call the cops to explain the situation, and they call an ambulance for him and help escort him off my property, and tell him not to come back. I reported him for CP and never heard from him again. Story 4. My sophomore year in college, I was talking to a girl that went to a university about an hour away. After a few months, she invited me to her 21st birthday party to go out with her and her friends. She says there's going to be a big party and I have to come. So I decided to make the trip with 2 of my fraternity brothers. We show up to the party and it's only my Tinder girl and her 2 roommates with no one else in sight. Awkward as heck, but the 2 roommates weren't going out or drinking that night. So me and my buds try to make the best of it. We try to start beer pong, flip cup, quarters, you name it. But I kid you not. The birthday girl doesn't play because drinking games are illegal. My jaw dropped to the floor and I knew I had messed up. So me and my brothers hit up our fraternity's chapter at this university and they said we're welcome. After some convincing, we managed to get my Tinder girl to come along with us. Somehow my 2 friends managed to get a little ahead of us and we started to leave the complex. As we're walking, the Tinder girl sees cops and flips out saying how we're going to get in trouble and we need to go back. Keep in mind she just turned 21 and we have nothing on us. So my friends keep going to the party and I couldn't ditch her because that's where we're supposed to stay. So I take one for the team and go back to her place. We end up watching the Lizzie McGuire movie. Things start to heat up and I begin to think this wasn't so bad after all. Wrong. She informs me she's on her time of the month and refuses anything farther than a makeout. I try to convince her, but nothing. Then she tells me she can do a little trick for me that will make me happy. I have no idea what the heck she's talking about, but I say go for it. Then I got a snap from her after a few hours when we made it back to my university. It was her and her 2 friends with a rubber that had fallen out of my pocket sometime that night. And it gets better. Over 2 months after that whole episode without any contact, she messages me and asks if we're going to be boyfriend or girlfriend or not. I have never Tindered since. Story 5. She had just one picture on her profile where you couldn't see any features at all, and it could have been taken anywhere on the planet. Somehow I still matched and we started writing for a few days. She told me that she hadn't had romantic encounters for years and didn't want to send any pictures, phone beforehand, or even send a voice message. I jokingly asked her if she is, in reality, a dude and want to steal my kidneys after luring me into a dark alley, and she jumped on the train and joked. Her jokes felt too specific, though. She said, well, maybe I was a dude. And after that, she joked about similar stuff. We still ended up meeting IRL. I decided in a crowded place, and so it was a bit weird. There was this small woman, and she was really pretty, though dressed a bit boyish. We went for a drink and I told her jokingly that I'm surprised she didn't turn out to be a guy, and she asked me how I would know that. I stated a few things and she immediately replied, which in hindsight may be too much knowledge, "Your voice is definitely female. You exercise your voice. You don't have an Adam's apple. Nowadays they can be surgically removed or hidden." Not sure what she exactly answered, but those look real to me. Could be hormones. They were smallish. Nonetheless, I had great fun and we ended up at my place, where I saw her, and what I saw that moment was a woman from head to toe. She declined, though, and was really sensitive to me not getting close to her. I wanted to start right away with the action, which didn't work out right away since my buddy had a nervous fit. She tried to help. She asked about 30 times if I liked her melons and what I think of them, and if I find her pretty. The weirdest thing about the whole ordeal was that I couldn't get the insert angle right. I know every woman is built differently, and I have my fair share of comparisons. Never had an entry angle that weird. After that, she immediately asked if I could call a taxi because she wanted to go, and wrote to me after that she felt bad, and that we should leave it at that one meeting. I was baffled since that never happened to me, and I treat every woman with utmost respect. I never slept with a converted woman, and especially not with one post-op, so I do not know how it feels, but something in my gut didn't feel right about her behavior and her physiology. It wouldn't bother me to know if she was converted, since that person was in my eyes most definitely a woman. But not knowing and wondering is so weird. Story 6. Weirdest one. I matched with this girl. We talked for about a week and she's really cool. Most of our talking was over Snapchat and she had sent a bunch of snap pictures, etc. This was a long time ago, and back when sending fake pictures and fake snaps wasn't really a thing. No one really knew how to do it, so if she sent a snap, you could be pretty sure it was them. I asked her if she wanted to meet up for dinner, so I get to her house, which is about 30 minutes away, to pick her up, and I'm sitting out front. I waited about 30 minutes outside her house, and she's just not coming outside. So I text her and say I've been waiting for a while. I'm about to leave, What's up? She texts back and says, "Hey, pull around the back so she can come outside. She doesn't want her family to know she's leaving." I go around the back and it's like the shady alleyway with a long driveway, and I was already weirded out, so I was like, "No, I'm not doing that. If you want to come out and we go to dinner, then come out front. Otherwise, I'm just going to leave." So a few minutes later, she comes outside. At this point, I had already invested, like an hour, and it would be another 30 minutes back, so sunk cost fallacy and all that. But when she comes out, it's definitely not the girl that I'd been talking to, or at least getting snaps of. But the weird thing was, the girl that came out was even cuter than the girl I'd been snapping, so, kind of weird, but okay, whatever. So we start heading to the restaurant and she gets a call. I can hear her arguing with somebody or whatever, and when she hangs up, she says, "Hey, can we go pick up my sister? She's in trouble." At this point, I'm a little weirded out, so I'm like, "I can take you wherever you want. If you need to go help your sister, but I don't want to get involved." She pushes a little more to go get her sister, and I insist I'll take her where she wants, but I'm not going to pick her up so she can go eat dinner with us. She starts yelling and screaming and asking why I tell her I don't know her and this whole situation is weird in the first place. I say, "Do you want me to drop you off?" She calls her sister and tells me to drop her off where her sister is. So we got there and there's nothing where she told me to go. It's just a street where she gets out of the car, still yelling and screaming at me. Later that night, I look at Snap and it's her and girl I've been talking to, and they're in my home city. I don't know if they just wanted to ride to where I was or if I still have never figured out what the whole deal was. Story 7. Matched with a girl on Tinder and she was absolutely gorgeous. Funny, tall, worked as an aerospace engineer, and lived in a very nice part of town. I know myself well, and it's not adding up in my head where she's interested in me. Like I'm 8 out of 10, but she's quite honestly pretty perfect. Go on the date, and it's honestly one of the best, if not the best date I've been on. Conversation was flowing. Food was amazing. We definitely connected so well. Went back to her house to drop her off, and we made out at her door. She said she wants to let me spend the night, but she's not ready. Invites me over Friday night. I think everything is great, watching a movie. She says she's going to the bathroom. I'm watching the movie and realize she's been gone for like 15 minutes. Then she comes walking down the hall in this full-on catsuit. Like legit thousands of dollars invested in this lifelike catsuit. Has claws, moving ears, fur covering 60 to 70% of her body. I ask her, "What's all this?" And she explains that she can't go off unless she's wearing it. So I'm like, screw it. Maybe I'll love it too. She had been so open and vulnerable and so kind since I met her that I was willing to try. She started kissing and scratching me, and I was just like, ow, ow, okay. And she started meowing, and I'm like, Jesus, come on. So at this point, I'm trying to get this over with ASAP and start meowing louder than her, and she's totally going crazy and loving it. She just holds my arm and just lays there, shaking. Just wait, don't touch me. I'm standing there for about 5 minutes. She lets go, takes off her suit, and cuddles me on the couch. I'm kind of over this, so I'm just watching the rest of the movie. And she falls asleep in my arms. So I'm like, screw it, and fall asleep. I wake up, and this woman's first words to me, staring me in the face as I open my eyes, are, "Will you marry me?" And I'm just like, oh no, that doesn't seem like a good idea. She's super upset now, and I'm just trying to calm her down. "But you were so into it last night." "Yeah, just for you. I wanted you to have a good time." She told me to get out, didn't hear from her for a month, and got a text asking if I was sure I didn't want to marry her. Story 8. This is a while back. Technically not an app, around 2008 to 2009. Using Craigslist personally to meet girls in New York City. Meet up with this chick and take her to a play I had to see for school. Dog Sees God, Confessions of a Teenage Blockhead. This girl is kind of that pale white Eastern European. Average looking, had a homely, cute look going on. I was interested. But her personality is off. She seems unsocialized, communicates poorly. The few times we talked on the phone beforehand, she came across more shy. Could tell she hasn't dated a lot or she doesn't know how to socially interact. It was just awkward as hell. After the play, I wanted to talk some more, so we went for coffee. On the train ride downtown to a Starbucks that's by a train station that we could both use to get home with our respective trains, she's telling me how she doesn't have a lot of friends, and the friends she does have, they use her and are not really friends, it sounds like. It's really putting herself down, and she tells me how her immigrant parents are the same way and don't really have any friends. But yeah, just a real pity party, and it shocked me how uncomfortable it was. I vividly remember looking around the train, and I swear, people that were listening to us were giving me looks like, dude, get out of this. Thing is, this was New York City, so I dated other girls that were first or second generation from immigrant parents, but they were usually much more socialized than this. Like it was 100% talking with somebody who was unsocialized. I don't remember it being talked about as much back then, but nowadays, I would have thought she was autistic or had Asperger's or was on the spectrum. I had dated enough by that point that I just knew that this was stuff you don't talk about in the first date. Kind of stuff you sprinkle in through the coming dates if it goes that far. And quite frankly, I thought she was cute enough that I was still interested in getting through this awkwardness and see what happens. We get the coffee and things are better from what I remember, and we make plans to see each other again. Later in the week, she calls when I'm walking over to a buddy's house. We talked for a bit, and I let her know that I was making plans for a date for later that week, and made sure to see if she was available on that certain day. When I get to my friend's house, I have to let her go and told her I would send more exact plans for a date the next day. She wanted to talk a bit more, so I stayed on the phone, talking for an extra half hour to call my friend to buzz me in. Well, this crazy weirdo instead decided to send me an email explaining how evil I am and how I was leading her on and wasn't really interested and was acting like her friends. Like, again, what kind of friends do you have? Remember her saying something like I should have talked to her instead of talking to my friend? Mind you, she called me and I let her know I was walking to my friend's place, so couldn't talk that long, and that I was planning to talk to her the next day about the date. For that, she put a hex on me. I was freaking hexed. I was kind of scared for a sec, thinking, did she follow me home? I knew that wasn't possible. I lived in Brooklyn, and we met up in Manhattan around 59th Street because that's where the subway was. I'd just never been told like that before. I had a hex put on me, so it sticks out in my mind. I know people have been through much worse, so I know it's not much, but for a younger me, it was a little scary. Story 9. Met a woman who had pics boarding an airplane at some tiny airport in what could have been somewhere in Myanmar. She was tall and exotic and looked very similar to Tia Carrere. We planned to meet for Thai food and then see a movie. I borrowed my ex-wife's car, which was a new bug, with very interesting butterfly artwork all along the sides and very obvious. This will be important later. I parked at a large garage facility nearby and walked to the spot. She sent a text that she was outside and very cold because she wore a mini skirt. I had visions of Wayne's World Tia after that message. I showed up and the woman was not the one in the picture. Maybe she was already on the plane and she took it. Needless to say, I didn't want to be rude, so we sat down and had dinner. It was very hard to get anything out of her. None of the interests we shared seemed to be interesting enough for her to discuss. I had to cut my losses and abort the date. So I told her I realized I needed to catch the last train home and we would not be able to see the movie. The last train wasn't for a few hours, but she apparently had no idea. I walked her to a bus stop and she told me that I could come to her place and hang out with her family. Mom, grandma, and baby. Happy that I escaped. I jumped in the aforementioned VW and began to exit the garage. It has exits on all sides and I chose the wrong one. She was right there when I pulled out and stared right at the car. I think the car was so amusing that she didn't even notice me. Began my drive home and got a text. No hands-free in that car, so I had to wait until I got home to read. I figured it was her saying she saw me and I was a schmuck. Nope, the text just read, "Too bad you had to go home. I would have done you." If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 10. She said she was half traveler and half Russian. We talked for about a month before things started getting weird. She was getting random ads from random fake accounts, messaging her, "You'll never love him like I did. Why are you taking him away from his daughter?" It sounded weird, but she said she got stuff like that all the time, so not to worry about it. Eventually, we arranged for me to go down and see her. She lived about 1 hour and a half away. On Saturday, I got a message from her on Friday at 1 a.m. saying that her dog had collapsed and he needed emergency surgery, which he didn't make it. I understood because we FaceTime a lot and I saw how bad of a state it was in, so fair enough. I called it off because she needed time to grieve. She phoned me the next day saying how sorry she was that she had to cancel and she was clock blocked by her dog. Turns out her parents went out the same day and bought her another dog, the exact age, gender, and color of the original. But then the random ad started again, saying the same stuff and she has had enough and somehow tracked down my ex and phoned her, screaming down the phone saying stuff like, "You don't mess with a traveler. I know where you live." My ex phones me and tells me about what's been said. She doesn't want to lie, so I believe her. Plus, say what you want about my ex, but don't threaten the house where my daughter lives. I phoned this girl where she denies everything, but eventually she flips the switch and goes full crazy and threatens me with this and that. I blocked her so fast after that, but my ex couldn't just leave it at that and somehow track down her Facebook where she isn't half traveler or Russian, just to common as many women catfishing people from all over for whatever reason. Also wanted to throw this out there. She was taking pictures of a random guy and calling him her ex and saying how crazy he was while telling me about the son they had together. Sending pictures of a random kid to other people to claim as her son. Story 11. Matched with a chick who was out drinking with friends. Said she'd be down to come over right then and there. I said yes, obviously. She shows up buzzed and I provide some more drinks and we're hammered pretty quickly after that. While doing the deed, I did it pretty quickly and fell into the sleep limbo. Next thing I know, I'm getting the Christ smacked out of me to wake up so that we can continue having intimacy, which I look at her like, what the hell? For a moment, before attempting to continue even though I had just finished. She proceeded to continue to wake me up 3 more times when I slipped into sleep, till I finally kicked her out at 5 a.m. and went back to sleep. The worst part is, she stole my favorite shirt on her way out. Another girl immediately began telling me her life story and decided that I was to be her therapist, boyfriend, and husband all rolled into one. We did it on the same night we matched, and it led to months of extreme attachment issues, saying she loved me and wanted to live with me after we were done with her first night's escapades. Yet another horrible hygiene. We dated for a month or so, and she could not, for the life of me, figure how to wipe her clean. When we would shower together, there would be a brown trail running from her head. I'd asked once, "What is that coloring from?" She said, "It must be my hair dye." Her hair was bright red. And another, I had not 420 friendly on my Tinder bio, government job, and a girl that matched with me. Sent a paragraph text about how it doesn't matter if my job doesn't let me. She could always do it before seeing me. I don't have to do it, etc. I reminded her that my job doesn't allow it, so I stay on the safe side and don't want to be around any of that stuff. She got mad and told me I was missing out on so many women because of it. Just unmatched and carried on with my day. I'm married now. Reading all these posts doesn't make me miss the dating scene whatsoever. Story 12. 2 come to mind. The first time I had tried back in the days before apps and it was all websites still. I'd matched with several people, but none of them really responded or anything, but one nerdy person. Now, I'm a huge nerd, but I'm aware enough to not dive into talking about D&D and such, which I mention only because when I told some friends about it later, they said that that was probably why everything happened, but no. And in fact, they were the ones that brought things like that up themselves. We messaged a few times there, and I was visiting family and making the long drive home at night. Before leaving, I asked if it would be okay to call and chat for a bit in the drive. For the entire 4-hour drive and for a few hours later, we talked. It was insane. They seemed to be into a ton of stuff that I was, and though I'm usually terribly anxious talking to even people I know, there wasn't a bit of that feeling for the entire 6 hours. Eventually, I had to get off the phone since it was like 2 in the morning, and I said I would call sometime later, or could we meet in a date somewhere? They said absolutely. We got everything set up. Met later that week at a restaurant. They jumped straight into something we had talked about before. It was great. I hadn't been that excited meeting someone in ever. We were leaving and we talked about going somewhere else in town. We had both got to the restaurant separately, and they said they would drive where we were going as well. They told me directions. I left first and turned out of the parking lot to head that direction. They instead turned the other way once I'd pulled out and floored it and just disappeared. I was very confused, but still went to where we said, thinking they were maybe just getting something from their house. They lived in the town we met in, so maybe. They called, got no answer. But waited for, well, an embarrassingly long while. Called again, and this time the call didn't even go through. Eventually, I went home, checked them on the dating site, and either they deleted the account or they blocked me. I never figured out what happened. Everything seemed fine while we were there. I didn't show up looking completely different from my pictures. I only had recent ones, so it's not like I came in 10 years older than my page looked like or happened to some people. I don't think I set any red flags, but it was so long ago I can't really comb through what happened because I don't remember much anymore. The messed up thing is that this has stuck with me for so long because even if they disappear halfway through the date and it was like 14 years ago now, it's still the only date I've ever been on. I did have one other person talk with me for a small amount of time on that site. One of her pictures had part of a tattoo on it. I thought I might have recognized what it was, and after a message or two, I brought it up and asked. It looked like something from an anime that I recognized. She responded, "Oh, everyone that is into anime is trash and unmatched." Messed up thing is that I kinda knew her because my roommate at the time was a mutual friend. He had gone to conventions with her where they had group cosplays with some other people. Then I tried apps a few years ago. No matches there at all, except for one person who messaged me saying that she only matched with me to tell me that I was the ugliest person I've ever seen and should just delete the app. Which I know I'm not exactly attractive, but that's a bit of an exaggeration, I think. Story 13. I matched with someone, and within 2 minutes, she sent this paragraph of what she wanted, including her phone number. I bite. Text her, and it seems to be going okay. A day later, she asked me if I would like to meet. I said sure. Do a quick Google Map search of the area, etc. Head out, I grab some McDonald's for myself and Bud and finally get there. The house looks like a hoarder's house. Crap. It's too late to turn back. She answers the door, I introduce myself, we go in. We go to her apartment and it was horrible. It's cluttered and dark and she has a full can of garbage in the living room. Like, what the heck? She puts on a movie and I can't help but notice there's a rat mess and leaves with a cobweb-filled guitar in the corner. She doesn't offer water or anything. Gets up and makes sausages and just open-mouthed chews them and burps constantly. At this point, I've already plotted my escape. But as I'm about to leave, she asks, and I kid you not, "Can I have your McDonald's? It's probably cold that way, so you can get a fresh one." I freaking beeline for the door and jetted home. I forgot to block her, and the next day she texted me to see if I'd like to come over and cuddle. But she has a boyfriend. Huh? I blocked her ASAP. Freaking dating apps. I guess you could say she had a unique way of hosting guests. Story 14. It did not happen on an app per se, but I had a girl that had a friend of mine asked to come meet me. I talked to her online, but I'm shy and I don't really ask to meet people often or easily. We were at a LAN party too when this happened, so I was around a lot of people. She essentially walked into the building, came straight up to me and whispered into my ear that I've been making her moist for so long. It completely grossed me out. And yes, saying she was moist is a total understatement. My friend didn't see that and offered to take us out to eat, and she kept grabbing me from under the table. When we dropped her off at home, she asked me to come look at her computer to fix the keyboard, and she essentially threw herself onto me as soon as the door closed. It had super awkward, super weird vibes. I was able to get her off me and simmer down and leave. She would message me and try to get me to hang out for 10 years. She would keep finding me on various media sites and such. Story 15. Just one of a few, I guess, but this one would be the most recent. Matched with a real cute girl who seemed pretty active and was up for playing We're Not Really Strangers together at her place to break the ice. It wasn't until we were figuring out details that she brought it up. She was in some sort of nurse or medical school clinic rotation program and not even in town until afternoon the next day. Found it weird for her to be on board with meeting at her place first meetup and that she actually wasn't staying in town but rolled with it. Day of, I show up and she finally tells me she was only going to be in town for 4 weeks. The next 2 weekends she was going to be busy with friends or cousins anyway. Conversation was also rough because she was more fixated on either moving in and getting ready for work starting the next day, or would not stop complaining already about my city and could not wait for the next rotation. I get it, but come on. All we did then was watch half of episode 1 of Fallout, pick up dinner, and try to make fruitless conversation until she admitted she was more tired than expected, and we should call it here. Said our farewells and let you know where I'm freeze, and she unmatched me the next day without another word. Never ended up even playing that specific game with her, much less getting to help her pay for food when I offered. Walked away thinking that was a weird waste of my time, even if it only lasted all of 2 to 3 days. At least her dog was nice. Story 16. I got stood up once by a girl I matched with on Hinge. She was going through a bit of a depressive episode and had other things going on, but had still agreed to meet up at like 8:30. Texted her to confirm earlier in the day and she didn't get back to me until like 8. I sternly got on to her about that while also saying we need to push it back so I can get ready if you still want to meet. She agreed. I went out, texted her after the time had passed, and nothing. Which wasn't really an issue because I was going to the barcade anyway to say bye to the bartender, because it was her last night. I'd become a bit of a regular. That's not the surprising part. That comes in afterwards when I come across her IG by way of suggested follows. I check it out and she really knows her angles because she barely looked like the photos she had on her profile. So I'm kind of happy she stood me up because I would have been a bit annoyed that this unattractive girl showed up in place of the one I thought was coming. Story 17. In the middle of the night, I matched with a woman who looked stunning in her pictures. She invited me to her home. When she opened the door, I caught a faint glimpse of the woman from the photos. Now, she appeared as if she'd been on something for the past year. She still had some beauty and life in her, but it was evident she was just a week away from looking weird. My heart broke at that moment. I stepped into her apartment and we talked. She shared horrible stories. A very lonely woman with no friends or support. She wanted me to have intimacy with her, but I couldn't. I told her she was an amazing woman who deserved to be with people who love her and encouraged her to seek help. As I walked out of her house, she was crying. We didn't date for months afterward, and my heart still felt broken. It's hard to witness someone in such a state. I felt like I had stepped into someone's personal hell. Should have brought a sympathy card instead of protection. Story 18. I matched with another girl who I never even went out with. When she stalked and pestered me and my ex, also had the misfortune of matching with her, the WLW dating pool can be surprisingly small. For months, until she got arrested. Constant phone calls and texts with spoofed numbers so she was unblockable. Following us both home and work, keying my ex's car, texting links to videos, trying to trigger PTSD. It was awful. Again, I literally never even went out with her. We matched, agreed to meet up for coffee, but then she wanted to go to a club instead and I said no thanks. And trying to reschedule, all she wanted to do was go out to clubs and bars and that's not something I feel comfortable with for a first date. So I said I don't think this'll work. Hope you have a nice life and find someone who matches what you're looking for better. Story 19. In my defense, she was incredibly hot. I went on a date with a woman that mostly went great, flirting and talking about benign things like hiking and career goals. At the end of dinner, the check came. She was a little empathetic about not going Dutch, but some women use that as a test to make sure you're not terrible. So, whatever. But when I tipped 20%, she launched into a 10-minute lecture about how tipping rewards parasites, and if people want to escape minimum wage jobs, they need to take pride in their work without reward. Blah, blah, blah. The date ended there, so I abstained from any further after-dinner activities. I was ready to move on, but the following weekend I guess she got intoxicated with friends and sent me pictures. I again repeat, She was really hot. I had also recently moved, so I'll admit it was generally a bit lonely. That afternoon, I told her I would be out of phone service because I was going fishing with a new friend, which was true. A friend with an urban name, as I imagined she would describe it. I get an essay text back from her about how if this was going to work, I needed to correct my peer group, blah blah blah. I blocked her and deleted the photos she sent because it made me ashamed. Story 20. Went on a date with a girl after chatting for a few days. 6 went great from my perspective, and she even said something about setting up a second date. I texted her later that night before going to bed when she dropped a bombshell on my lap. Turns out she has had a boyfriend for a while and was dating other people to test her love for him. I asked, what if he did the same thing to her? And she told me he never needs to know. Wouldn't ever know, and he wouldn't do that to her because he loves me. More red flags than a parade went off in my head. I'm glad it ended there because I wasted more of my time. Had another interaction where we talked for about a weekend before finally scheduling a date. Not 5 minutes after we agreed on a time and place did she tell me, I can't do this. I have a boyfriend. I about gave up completely with online dating. Thankfully, less than a month later, I met my wife of 5 years. Story 21. Matched up and chatted for a couple days. Met up that Friday for a couple drinks. Ended up hitting it off and walking out to the parking lot together. She invited me to sit in her car with her to talk a little more and ended up giving me a whistle. Kept chatting after that for a few days. Like the following Tuesday. Invited me to a local sports bar to hang out while she watched her friends play softball. I get there and she's sitting in a large group. Comes up, greets me with a kiss, and goes to grab me a drink. Like 20 minutes later, a guy in softball gear walks up and starts talking to her. He walks off to go play and I ask, what the hell? Tells me that's just her husband and he's going to be busy playing for hours so we could have a few drinks and go out to the car again. I have no idea if he was aware. She was trying to start drama or just crazy. I went to the bathroom and dipped the hell out. Story 22. This was a long time ago. Long story short, I got catfished. Now, I have nothing against individuals with dwarfism. It was not as advertised, and when she showed up, I was obviously taken aback. And maybe I'm too nice. I figured the worst that could happen was having a nice conversation and a glass of wine, and I'd be out of there. In the middle of dinner, she pulls out a 2-inch thick binder full of lighting fixtures. I got catfished by a woman with dwarfism who simultaneously tried to sell me on some wild LED MLM scheme. Only date I've ever walked out of. People who have tried to meet someone from the internet in real life, what happened? We had been planning to meet after knowing each other for years online. Just a couple of crazy old guys who loved cars, spears, and weird crap. I had a business trip that was going to take me out near to where he lived. He lived in northern NH, and I had a trip to Montreal. But my business trip got delayed and delayed again. And between those cancellations, his cancer, which he had defeated once, came back with a vengeance. When I contacted him about my updated schedule to come out in what was then 6 weeks from the call, he said his doc said he had weeks to live. I told him I didn't care what it meant, I was going to stick with the plan. So I reserved a rental car in the hope he'd still be kicking. I stayed in touch regularly, he moved to a hospice, and I let him know that I'd cared for my grandmother through months of hospice, 24/6, as she passed away of cancer, so I'd been there and seen it. I was not scared of hospice and would be honored to see him regardless of where he was. When the weekend came, my flight got delayed. There was a forecast of frozen mix between Montreal and the border, but I drove it anyway. I landed in Montreal, paid out of pocket for my rental car, dropped my bags at the hotel downtown, and drove to NH. I got to the hospice around 9 p.m. and talked to him and his wife for hours. I brought him some Timbits at his request. It was the only thing he asked for. Eventually, around 2:30 a.m., I realized that I needed to head back because I had to be at work, teaching a class at 9 a.m. back in Canada, so I slowly said my goodbyes, took a picture with him, and drove back. I called my son to keep me awake, and when I got to the border back to Canada, I told the guards that I had some carrots in my bag that had come from the US via plane, to Canada, to NH, and now back to Canada. That was the only thing I had to declare. My son stayed with me on the phone until I got back to my hotel, where I took a power nap and then taught my class that day. Guard Duck, my friend's online nickname, passed on last Thanksgiving, which was just a couple of weeks after I visited. But he held on and fought and faced it through it all. He never flinched or looked away. He was thankful for the extra time he had with his wife and getting to see friends. He and his wife are among the greatest people I've ever met. Speaking of, I got a Christmas card from her a couple of days ago. I'm in the process of putting together a care package for her. She's doing well as could be. I guess this is just to say, imaginary internet friends are sometimes the best friends you'll ever make. And I regret nothing. R.I.P. Guard Duck. Story 2.
I met one of my best friends in an AOL chat room 18 years ago. I chatted with her nightly for about a year, lost contact for 2, and then bumped into her in real life and have been friends ever since. We were also recently roommates for a year and a half. She's basically a sister to me. Story 3. I kind of have 2 examples here. Met a guy online through a pen pal website. I love writing letters. I live in Australia and he lives in California. We decided to try a long-distance relationship, and after 6 months, he came to stay with me for 3 weeks. I never left, and we've been together nearly 9 years, married for 2. During the wedding planning process, I was an avid gamer. I met someone to play games with that was good to teach me to play better since I wasn't very good. Got talking and found out that the guy and his wife were wedding photographers, and we just hours canceled because he double booked himself. He flew down and did our wedding photography for us. All in all, I had pretty good experiences, I would say. Story 4. Met a girl in a Harry Potter forum when I was 15 years old. I'm from Canada and she's from France. When I turned 17, I flew to France to spend 3 weeks at her place, and she then flew back to Canada with me for 3 weeks. 10 years later, we are still really good friends. Met again in Ireland 2 years ago. Story 5. Back in 2008, my 3 Call of Duty buddies from a few states away and I would play every day after school, after randomly adding each other. They all 3 knew each other in real life. Friend number 1's dad passed away suddenly, and I sent him and his mom a sympathy card. They were both really moved by the gesture, and I was invited there over the summer. As of today, number 1 and I have met up 3 times, and number 2 and number 3 4 times. We continue to game and text at least once or twice a week, now that we've all grown up. I consider them closer friends than a lot of the people I'm friends with here at home. Story 6. Probably not what you're looking for, but this was kind of wild. I posted in a thread looking for vocalists in my area to sing on some songs I've been working on. Someone responded to look up someone via Instagram. I looked her up, and she's good. Really good. Turns out she's been recording at a studio just down the street from my house. I let a little while pass without messaging her because I wasn't quite ready to send anything out yet. Got to my band's show last weekend at this dive bar on the other side of town. Got off the stage and she's in the crowd and actually approached us and complimented us. Took me a minute before I made the connection. Sent her the songs yesterday and she liked them. Story 7. I met one of my best friends over Instagram and I was 12-ish. We both had pretty popular photography type pages and we started talking through DM. Many FaceTime calls and conversations later, we met in person with our moms when we were 14. The next year, flew out to California to stay with our family and go to Disneyland with them. Then the next year, flew out to their home and spent over 2 weeks with them. Story 8. Does Craigslist count? Because I got a lot of roommates off Craigslist over the years. Became very good friends with a few of them. One of them had this ex-boyfriend she wouldn't stop complaining about. All day, every day. Her stories about him were so outlandish and she was so embittered. It made me insanely curious about what his side of the story was, given that I lived with her and knew that she could be a handful. I wound up meeting him randomly a few years later, not online, and paid extra close attention because I knew who he was from all of her endless complaining. I was like, he's really cute and he seems smart and funny and not at all like a human garbage monster. And then we fell in love and had a baby. Blah, blah, blah. I sometimes wonder if it would have happened if I'd never met this random bitter ex-girlfriend after posting a roommate ad on Craigslist. I probably wouldn't have paid nearly as much attention to him if I hadn't been hearing terrible stories about him for literally years. For what it's worth, we're still together, and I really must attribute your stories to the fact that everyone is a less than ideal partner when they're like 17 years old. Story 9. Guy that I had exchanged messages with from OkCupid found me on Facebook. I was a bit weirded out, but accepted his friend request and noticed his last name didn't match with all of his other family members. Not a common last name. I Googled his name and nothing came up. Then I Googled his first name with the last name that most of his family members had, and boom. A registered offender had been out for less than a year after serving 12 years. I told him what I found. Said thanks, but no thanks. I deleted OkCupid and never went on a dating site again. Story 10. I met a girl from Tumblr at a meetup I organized. This was back in 2010 when Tumblr wasn't quite so crazy. We got married a couple years later and have a kid together, with one more on the way. Explaining how we met now is awkward since Tumblr became the cesspool that it is today. Story 11. I joined a couple small gaming forums in 2002. I befriended lots of people on each and found myself waiting to meet everyone. Some people thought the idea creepy, but it was purely out of friendship on my side. So in 2008, I saved up about $1,500 and went on a 3-week, 8,000-mile road trip to meet anyone who was interested in having me visit them. I met over 20 people on that trip. Every visit was awesome in its own way. It is a lot cheaper than you might think it is if you're willing to sleep in your car or if people you visit let you stay the night. One of the women I met on that trip married me 6 years later. Been together ever since. I've also had one friend from that group live with me for a couple years before the road trip, actually. And I've met several others under other circumstances. Meet people from the internet. It's great. Trust me. I can literally say it changed my life and for the better. Story 12. Basically, all my friends are from online gaming, all over the world, and we've met with few exceptions. One in particular stands out. Was being flamed in an MMO battleground. This one other player supported me and backed me up against the crowd twice in a row. Made me curious, so I PM'd them after the second game and they were actually on the same server as me. First, I thought they were being a bit overly weird, then I thought they were also gay until I figured out it was a girl I was talking to. That explained their way of writing and what they were writing, which threw me off since I'd been assuming I'm talking to a male. 3 months later, we met in our country. Now we've been a couple for over 3 years, engaged for one and traveling the planet together. Also, gay? What do you mean? Story 13. A guy who lived 2 states away friend requested me on MySpace. We never really chatted or connected. Fast forward 12 or so years and I'm in the state this guy lives in at a wine bar enjoying an acoustic set. The musician looks super familiar. It's the guy from MySpace. It's a small bar and so he casually says between songs, "You look very familiar. Have we met?" And before thinking, I blurt out, "Sort of. It was a long time ago, but it's not the type of story you'd want me to tell in front of everyone at the bar." Immediately, he turned beet red, the bar went quiet, and everyone was staring and looking at him, and I realized immediately after I said it what my comment must have sounded like. Story 14. I was best friends or soulmates with a girl I met on the internet when I was 10. We were so close, we wrote long letters to each other every day. Dreamed of the day we would be united in real life, and we even believed we were telepathic and could send one another mental messages long distance. She was the closest friend I ever had for probably at least 5 years. We stopped talking for a few years, but stayed distant friends. One day out of the blue, she says she's headed my way and wants to meet up. She ended up crashing on the couch for about a week. I was super nervous to meet her. I thought she changed a lot and we wouldn't relate anymore, especially since we hadn't been talking as often. When I met her in person, it was like we'd never been apart. We'd known each other in person the whole time. We'd never webcammed and barely even exchanged photos, but she was so familiar to me. Still the best friend I've ever had, and I'm grateful to have rekindled a relationship in that way. Story 15. Well, we've been dating for almost 4 years, so it's been going pretty well. One day we'll get married, but we have next to no money because she's a broke college student and I'm a broke manager, supporting her, so we're waiting on it. We're raising 2 cats together, too. Our future children are amazing, and I'm so proud of how much sleep they accomplish. Story 16. I fell for a girl once. Met in a chat room and talked just about every day for 2 years. Long distance with her in the US and me in Australia. One day, she basically just disappeared without a word, and feeling impulsive, I thought I'd fly over to visit her. It would be just like a movie, making a grand romantic gesture and everything working out perfectly, so I flew all the way to a small town called Udawa, TN, booked the closest hotel to her house, which was an almost 10-mile walk to her house. So I walked all the way and knocked on the door, hearing footsteps rushing to the door, my heart racing. Opened the door and it's a 13-year-old African-American boy. Knocked on every door in that street, hoping I just made a mistake, but no dice. One of the lowest points of my life was walking back to the hotel and spending the rest of the week alone on the opposite side of the world. What'd you think was going to happen? Story 17. Forgot what instigated it, but when I was like 16 or so, I got talking with some older, late 20s dude on MySpace. I lived nearby, so we decided to meet up and chill. Turns out he lived in a penthouse type thing and came from a super rich family, so basically his whole life was working out, buying nice crap, and partying. He was also insanely good looking. He pre-gamed a bit. He invited a bunch of people, mainly women, over. I'm talking like a 10-to-1 girl-to-guy ratio. And we partied. Ended up getting some with a young woman that night. Chilled with him on and off for a year or so, and pretty much every night went like that. Not always getting some, but I mean, a hell of a lot more often than I ever have since. Ended up cutting ties because surprisingly, being an attractive jock playboy living on daddy's checkbook can make people kinda schmucky. Who would have guessed? Story 18. I've met 2 people from Reddit in real life. Not counting the mod or admin meetup in 2017 I went to. The first messaged me and we went to chatting and she said she was coming to Chicago for the Blues Festival. I offered her a place to stay if she needed one and she agreed. I was innocent at first, but we ended up hooking up for that week and then she went back to Canada. This was like 5 years ago and she and I are still good friends and talk all the time. The second messaged me too, saying she really connected with the comment I made about first seeing the ocean because she just gone through a similar experience. She was going to come down to Chicago to visit a friend of hers and ask for suggestions of things to do. I gave her a bunch, and then we kept talking and finding out we had more and more in common. We eventually started talking over the phone and text messages, and when she came down, we went to Kuma's for burgers and beer. We kept talking, and I was really starting to like her. She said she wanted to come down to Chicago again, and if she could stay with me. I told her of course. And a few weeks later, she was here for Saturday and Sunday. Really, it was mostly Sunday because she got in late on Saturday and fell asleep on my couch. The next day, we went to the zoo and had a really amazing day. After that, we came back to my place and decided to go to the brewery nearby, which made a beer that had her name in it. We went there and then ended up bar hopping through until we ended up near the dive bar by my apartment. We drank and played pool there and eventually grabbed some to-go beers and headed back. I asked if she wanted to see the place by the river I like to go and drink and think. We sat and eventually started making out and decided to head back to my apartment. We slept together and then the next day went to the south side to get breakfast at a place she really liked near her friend's apartment before she had to drive back. We kept talking after that, and I was planning on coming up to visit her in Detroit, but then one day she just ghosted me out of nowhere. I don't know why she did, but I was really bummed because I like this girl a lot. Long distance is a deal breaker for most. Story 19. I met this Singaporean girl online more than 10 years ago. I used to make fairly popular Flash animations, and she was a fan. We got together since we were both somewhat loners. We chatted and video called almost every day for a couple of years. Later, she found someone else, and then I did too. After I broke up a few years ago, the Singaporean girl started chatting with me again. It turned out she had also broken up around the same time, so we started the long-distance relationship thing all over again. Since we were now adults and had my own place, we seriously started to entertain the idea of her visiting me. She did visit, paying for the ticket herself and planned on staying in my apartment for 1 month. I was stressed out and imagined all the things that could go wrong. Things went great, better than I could have ever hoped. We spent every day watching YouTube, being affectionate, and playing video games together. If there ever was a person I'd love to spend the rest of my life with, it's her. The best part is, the feeling is mutual. Since then, she has visited me a second time, but at the moment, there are no plans for her to stay here permanently. Kind of hurts that I only get to see her about once a year, but at least I have something to look forward to. Sorry, it's not a story with a big twist. It is what it is. Story 20. Wait, have we come back around where it's weird again? I met my first real girlfriend on Hot or Not like 15 years ago. I met my second girlfriend on World of Warcraft. I met my third on March, fourth on eHarmony, and fifth on Tinder. I'm now married to the Tinder girl and we have a kid. There's also an unknown number of women I met on all said sites prior to this marriage. I feel like other than my family and the handful of friends I have from school, every single person I know is somehow from the internet. Well, looks like somebody needs to touch grass. Story 21. I was traveling in America and arranged to meet a couple of people from a chat board I used to post on. A girl and a guy who were friends in that town. Didn't know much about them, but I did know the girl was a club dancer and I was a little bit excited about that. They turned up at the bar and the girl was a beast with a visible mustache. Genuine club dancer though. The guy was a dwarf. They were both lovely people and we had a great time, and obviously there was absolutely nothing wrong about either of those things, but I was a little bit taken aback and kind of, oh, internet, at first. Just to really clarify, there is obviously nothing wrong about being a little person. It just very much took me by surprise at first. I feel bad writing this down, but it was just surprising when you don't expect it. No, I getcha. Story 22. This pertains to two different friends. We played World of Warcraft for something like 7 years. They always joked and mentioned about actually hanging out, but we were both middle schoolers when we started playing WoW. Fast forward to 2016, both of us are grown-ups with jobs and still in constant contact through video games and social media. We finally went forward with a plan for me to fly from Minnesota, where I live, out to New York, where he lived. Spent a week out there and had some of the most fun of my life. I returned in 2017 for a 2-week stay, planning on going back again this spring. He's even tried to get me to move out there with him. The second friend was the guy that introduced me to my first friend. I never chalked him up as the type that would open his door to strangers from the internet. He was our guild leader in WoW and was quite a bit older than all of us, like 10 years. So for most of the time knowing him, it wasn't really something I considered until 2018, where I'm in my mid-20s and hanging out with people in their 30s isn't weird at all. I rented a car and drove down and met up with him after nearly 10 years of gaming together and spent an enjoyable week hanging out and playing video games together. I strongly suggest if you trust your internet or gaming friends enough to go visit them, it's something I haven't for a second regretted and has become a yearly tradition for me. If you're not a loner and actually have friends, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button. Story 23. I messaged a friend of a friend on MySpace around 2008. We became good online friends as she was in Europe backpacking at the time and staying with her family in England in the interim. She was going to be coming back to the States. I'd grown up there to find a job and she asked if she could crash at my place. Of course I said yes. Upon meeting in person the first time, all of our feelings held via online chats and messages materialized. The attraction was instant, but the timing was all wrong and she's just gone out of a long-term relationship. We were good friends still, but had a falling out. My fault, nothing weird, just being a dumb young guy who thought he was hot crap. Lost touch for a little while. 2010. Sometime in 2011, I get a text saying she's coming through town with her friend, girl, after having completed a hitchhiking race and needs a place to crash. We had texted every now and again to check in and to let the other know we missed each other. So of course I said yes. Duh. We met up, ate Mexican food, had some drinks, and had a great time reconnecting in real life. The next day, the girls, in the spirit of the aforementioned hitchhiking race, despite it being over, wanted to hitch from my place, Nashville, to a little town in Texas. They asked to be dropped off along the highway, I-40 west, and I offered to take them 50 miles as a small head start. Of course, it starts raining. Around the 50-mile mark, I offered to take them 100 miles. It's 750 miles door to door for them, as I'm feeling bad about picturing them with their thumbs out on the highway in crappy weather. These girls can handle themselves, but even still. And the three of us in their gear are crammed into my little GMC Sonoma, so this is definitely not a long road trip kind of vehicle. 15 hours later, we arrive at their destination, Texas. 3 days later, I leave Texas. She and I both having enjoyed the time immensely, but with our minds a tad confused as to where things go from here. We stay in touch as much as we can, but our lives are indeed busy. In spring 2012, after much discussion, I left everything and moved to Texas to pursue job opportunities and take her on a date. In winter 2014, we moved in together. In late fall 2015, we got engaged. In late summer 2016, we were married. We're now living and working in England and continuing to love life with each other. So yeah, internet friends for the win. Story 24. I broke down and tried out Tinder and ended up securing a date. The girl was 45 minutes away and wanted to see Justice League on release weekends, and she was into comics like I am, and she wanted to meet at a local comic shop before we went to the theater. I met her there, and she ended up dressing in pajamas and also brought her sister. Afterwards, they immediately said they were going to Taco Bell and for me to follow them, to which they took a bunch of weird turns and speeds that I couldn't follow and I lost them. I went back to the comic book store and tried to text her, but she ended up buying a burner phone to talk to me and never responded to anything for 4 months. I ended up watching the movie at a $4 movie theater. At least the popcorn was good. Story 25. I went on Plenty of Fish years ago. I set up my profile and must have accidentally allowed comments on photos. Well, a lot of guys message you on those sites, and a lot of them don't react well to a no thank you when asked to meet. So I went out to dinner with a guy, and he asked me to come in for a bit when we got back. Immediately he came over while we were still standing and was all over me, hugging and trying to kiss me. I pulled my face back and pushed him back, like, what are you doing? He then told me that people had written a bunch of nasty comments under my picture on the profile, but for some reason I didn't see them or know about this. So basically, a bunch of random strangers made up stuff which almost got me essayed. And this happened in a couple of dates. This was just the first guy to explain why he was behaving like that. I left the other dates as well, so I asked the guy if he reported it. He said no. I told him I couldn't believe he didn't report it and I was leaving. I went home and went into the profile settings. I figured out how to turn off the enable comments feature. I did not look for or read the comments, as I do not want to be thinking about whatever awful things they said. In hindsight, I probably should have printed them out and given them to the police so they don't do this to another woman. Story 26. I have several old friends whom I first met online. I'm in my mid-30s now. I met one of them when we were both 16. We were regulars on the same message boards back when they were a thing. Became friends, kept talking and emailing for years, and he's come to visit a few times. He lives in the Midwest. I'm in New York City, so it's rare, but still fun. Another friend I met on LiveJournal many years ago, and the same thing happened. Again, we live far apart, but see each other once every couple years. Story 27. I used to play a healer in World of Warcraft. It was pretty common to make friends with tanks or meteor players for group up quests or dungeons or raids. My first character I made for that game was male and female, as I decided I'd rather just play and not be bothered because I was a girl. In 2005, I met a tank player online and we started grouping up quite a bit. We both could reliably play our classes. This tank player was playing a female character. We were friends for a while, and it finally came out that I was female while everyone had just assumed I was male and that he was male when people assumed he was female. Anyway, that player is now my husband. We met in person in 2006. We've been married since 2010 and have a toddler. I would have definitely been comfortable meeting some of my other online gaming friends too. I felt closer to some of them than people I knew in person. Story 28. Finally, a question I have a good answer to. I made a pen pal in Korea in 2007 who I stayed up chatting all night with for over several years. In late 2012, my father organized a holiday to the Philippines for him, my brother, and myself. I told my friend in Korea about it, and they said, "Why don't you come to Korea?" I figured, why not, and asked my dad. To my surprise, he said yes, and so it was decided. We added Korea into our plans, and that Christmas I met my pen pal of over 5 years. We headed off straight away and met up several times over the next few days. I fell head over heels for them, and on an impulse, invited them with us for the holiday to the Philippines. After much convincing, they decided they would come. We spent New Year's drinking at a street party in Manila, and that's when I asked her to be my girlfriend. She said yes. The rest is history. We got married in December of 2014 and have our first baby on the way. Story 29. This will probably get buried, but I actually have a good one here. We met on IMVU. I don't know if anyone has been on that website lately, but it used to be a lot different. Anyway, it's a virtual chat room that would match you with random people online. Night Owl and I met one day and didn't stop talking. I mean, we literally talked every day for years. We would chat online, talk on the phone, the landline once we got free long distance, and write letters to each other. He's from Michigan and I'm from Indiana. We met about 13 or 14 years ago. I'm not sure exactly when. For my 15th birthday, he convinced his parents to head down to Indiana to meet me and my family. They both basically said, "Glad you're not a criminal." Lol. After a couple of years and adulthood getting in the way, we reconnected when I told him he should come celebrate my 21st birthday with me. When he came to visit, I suggested he move in with me. What could be better than my BFF living with me? I'll tell you, that first kiss. Once things started towards a relationship, I don't think either of us were really ready for it, moved fast. They're still so happy together 4 years later. We just got married back in October. It was beautiful. He was so fancy in his top hat. And he's still my bestest best friend and my favorite human. Oh my gosh. Memories. IMVU? Story 30. Sure, lots of times. Not through any dating app type deal. Haven't gone that route, but I met up with lots of people through various hobby-focused forums, back when forums were more of a thing. I belong to a number of small little online communities for motorcycles, mountain bikes, photography, music, and so on. They were small enough that you knew most of the active members by name and were well enough moderated that everyone had to act like a grown-up or get kicked out. Given that you had some idea who you were talking to after a while, meeting up really didn't seem like a big deal even in the days before it was a cardinal sin to reveal your actual identity online. I met up with individuals and groups many times to ride dirt bikes or catch their band play or see their photo exhibit at a gallery. I still hang with some of those folks. Obviously, not every personality meshed perfectly in the real world, but they all had a common interest and some history of getting along in the virtual world, so it was all pretty chill. I'm sure there are lots still out there, but these small forums I was part of sort of fizzled out as Facebook and Reddit type stuff became the big thing. I have met up with several people from here as well, mostly from the cycling subreddits. I recently spent a day showing someone who was visiting my area around the local mountain bike trails, and we had a great time. It's all been cool though. But I am a bit more apprehensive about it, as with such a large user base, I don't really know who anyone is on here. Now that I think about it, I did set up a date online once. She brought her brother along and really didn't say anything the whole time. Kind of weird, but I understand being nervous. However, the brother and I got along great and became friends. Never went on a second date with a girl though. Story 31. First time when I was a kid. Met a guy at a shopping center and traded floppy disks. Early internet era when it would have taken forever to upload or download a whole 1.44 megabytes. Most important was just after college, I moved in, we got engaged and got married and have been happy ever since. About a decade and a half. Another was a friend who let me crash at his place for a few days while I was traveling and he showed me around the city. Another turned out to live in the next town over. We got to be really good friends for a while and would hang out a lot, but gradually drifted apart after a few years. And there are some coworkers that I normally only ever see online. Occasionally, we meet up at the same city and party. Long, intoxicated nights, wandering around strange cities trying to find our hotel rooms. Finally settling in about dawn only to have to wake up and work again or travel back home in a couple hours. Story 32. I had a woman in my town message me asking if I was the guy who sold her a bed. She found me through her boss of the restaurant she worked at. It wasn't me that sold her the bed, but she still seemed keen to want to chat afterward. We became really good friends in a really short period of time to the point where we fell for each other. But she already had a boyfriend and didn't want to leave him for someone she'd met online, much like her ex did to her. Either way, we carried on chatting until she said things were getting more serious with the guy. They were looking at getting a house and she was possibly pregnant. Deleted and blocked me the following day. Then deleted her Facebook. Saw her about a year later, pushing a pram, and again after that about another 3 months later. Both times I made sure she saw me. She nearly burst into tears both times. Story 33. Met dudes to go fishing twice. First time was ocean fishing off the coast of Oregon. Showed up at the boat launch at 0600. Helped launch his boat and hopped in. Battery was out. So he pulled the battery out of his truck and packed it onto the boat. Also out. So I pulled the battery out of my truck and we were off. Caught a limit of bottom fish, cleaned him, then jumped his truck. Next time, I met a different dude to fish the Willamette River in Portland for sturgeon. Launched the boat and got a mile downriver and the motor crapped out. He couldn't get it started, so engaged his kicker motor to get back upstream to the boat launch. The motor wasn't strong enough to fight the current. I told him to position the boat behind a big rock to be protected from the current and anchor up. I opened up the main motor and got her started, but it wasn't running great. Good enough to make it back to the launch, though.
10 out of 10 would meet fishing dudes again. At no point in this story did I understand a single thing. Story 34. Just met an online friend of 6 years a few months ago for my wedding. We were close friends and still are, but not everything lived up to the expectation. It never dawned on me or any of my other friends that this visiting friend might have had something along the lines of Asperger's, that we should have picked up on it. My little brother is on the spectrum, so the signs were clear as day when I finally met him in person. This condition is in no way a detriment to our friendship. I'll love him all the same. It was just strange to have this image of a friend I thought I knew, only to realize they were someone different all along. It's not a bad difference, it just almost felt like I had lost a friend deep down. I was friends with someone that didn't exist. Somehow, over the phone or game chat, he doesn't have the same quirks he has in person. He's not aware of any of this himself. It's hard to explain. But like I said, we're still close friends and we talk at least once a week. Only now I have a better picture of who the real friend is behind the voice. Oh no, I get you. I have a friend who talks in all caps online, but really is just very shy in person. Story 35. Got married. Our anniversary was just a few days, 17 years. We met via the long defunct Yahoo Personals. It's something I reflect on often. I actually canceled what was supposed to be our first date due to needing to study. She hasn't mentioned it in a few years, so I might have finally lived that down. We hit it off on the first meeting. We were living together after a couple months. Took 6 months to plan a wedding we couldn't really afford. Looking back, I think about how close we came to not meeting at all. I said from the first time I heard it that she had a lovely voice, but that was all she was at the time. A soft voice in the night, easily drowned out by all of life's noise. I'm generally agnostic, but when I look back at all those times, a small part of me wonders. Story 36. Someone from overseas randomly messaged me asking me about how my city is. She was planning a 6-month working holiday and wanted to know how the city was. Normal type stuff like weather, where to go out, where to avoid, etc. What started as the odd email quickly became daily online chats. When she arrived in my city, I became her tour guide, and not long after, her boyfriend. We dated the whole time she was here. Even discussed me moving back with her, but we were two different people and broke up when she left. This happened about 10 years ago, and we're still in regular contact. Story 37. I got a pretty great track record with this one, and possibly have some pretty high stakes with it too. Seeing as I've been usually meeting up in foreign countries and sharing Airbnbs and stuff, I'm a mod of an anime sub. It's for one where the fandom is pretty cool overall and not super huge. I've met all these people via that subreddit. End up commenting on the sub to each other, recognize usernames, move it to Discord, and eventually just make plans to meet up. So far, I'm up to 7 people, with a few others that were more randomly bumped into them because of fandom stuff and didn't realize it or plan it. First time I planned a trip to Japan with 2 people. None of us had met in real life previously. Lots of please don't be a serial criminal jokes were had. In the end, it was 100% fine. Not cringy or awful. They were both super cool. Sometimes it's awkward for a bit since you've never met before and it can be harder to keep the conversation flowing, but everybody's been cool and haven't been ended. Bonus, one of the people from that trip to Japan I also met up with in Japan again on a second trip. Just yesterday, I drove 5 hours and she flew from the other side of the country to hang out again. 10 out of 10 would travel buddy again. Story 38. I'm the commissioner of a fantasy baseball league with players from all over. We got people in Maine, Los Angeles, Chicago, the UK, Canada, and Australia. Well, our Australian league mate was coming to the US to do a tour of the few different MLB perks, and my good friend and I decided to meet him in Chicago to see a White Sox game. Tickets were bought, plans were made, and we ended up meeting him at Guaranteed Rate Field for the game. He pays for our tickets, having us each buy him a beer that night. Super cool guy and a great guy. I hope he can make it back to the States sometime again soon. Really, I'd love to meet up with a lot of the other people in our league as well. Story 39. I met a shy girl on OkCupid in February 2014. She was very different from most of my friends and all of my exes at the time, but surprisingly easy to talk to. We texted almost every day and talked on the phone once a week or so. She slowly became my best friend and I became hers. Over the next 2 years, we planned to meet up, but nothing materialized due to our schedules. Finally, in July 2016, she came to visit me over the July 4th weekend, and it was great. Our friendship translated incredibly well from phone to in person. She introduced me to the current generation of Pokemon. I fell off after Yellow, and I showed her that 3D games continued to be released even after Wii Sports. I was a little sad when she left, but knew I had this amazing friend living just 2 hours away. Not bad. Our friendship continued as it always had, and in December 2016, she called to say she was graduating from college and that a friend of hers had professed her love to her and she didn't know what to do. As always, I gave my advice, chatted for a bit, then hung up to get on with the day. But this time, something was different. We'd both been there through ill-fated relationships. This shouldn't have been any different, but for some reason it was. Was it a crush? I couldn't have a crush on my best friend, right? Turns out I did, and she had a thing for me. Fast forward to today, we've been dating for 2 years, have a house together, and just adopted the most adorable but stubborn little red husky. The internet is a beautiful place. Story 40. I actually met my boyfriend via the internet, and after having talked for a year, we met in real life. We went camping for a few days and drove around my home state, and I showed him around a bit. It actually happened earlier last year and was honestly the best thing I've ever done. We just celebrated our year anniversary of meeting, but this time with me currently living in his home state. It's definitely worked out for the better, and our relationship continues to grow and be better now that we're not doing long distance and get to see each other every day. Long distance can work, and online can work. You just have to be 100% sure and be willing to put in a lot of work. It hasn't been easy, but he's worth it. I know he feels the same about me. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.